Welcome to the Configure Price Quote podcast. My name is Sohn and I'm the founder of CPQ Consulting. This podcast is 100% focused on Configure Price Quote, also known as CPQ, and will provide you useful insights into this topic. My guest today is Hiren Shah, founder at B2B Matrix. Hiren is a seasoned enterprise architect with deep experience designing and integrating process flows across the Salesforce and SAP ecosystems. He's advised Fortune 100 organizations, including Hitachi, EDS, and General Motors, and earlier led projects at SAP America. He also led the renewable energy company and works hands-on across SAP ERP and Salesforce apps like Aptus, Conga, CPQ and CLM, and Salesforce CPQ. Hiren, welcome to the CPQ podcast.
Thank you, Frank. I've followed you for many years, and finally, it's a pleasure to speak to you live.
Now, I'm very excited to have you here. And then let's maybe start our discussion today by telling me a little bit more about yourself and what you did before you started B2B Matrix.
Yes, before I started B2B Matrix, I worked for SAP America. This is when SAP was the main game in town, and you did not even have Salesforce existing as a company. So we did lots and lots of end-to-end process implementations. We did not call it digital transformation at the time, but that's kind of what we did. And we had a very successful run for many, many years. Up until then, the business model started to evolve from on-prem to cloud, and then monolithic systems to maybe best-of-breed systems.
And was that also for you the reason to start B2B Matrix, to respond to that change, or was there something else?
We had started B2B Matrix while SAP was still the market leader because we had seen several gaps within SAP. So we had a successful, thriving consulting company and a solutions company addressing the gaps for SAP customers for what they needed to do if SAP did not do it. But as we evolved with that company, there were several shifts happening in the industry itself. And with SAP, Frank, there was no front end, back end. Everything was just one monolithic system. Like, the good thing was that in one system, you could find everything. You could traverse from a sales order to a purchase order to a production order to the invoice, see everything in one place. But then when you break it up into all these different pieces, you have the front end, you have the back end, you have the middle piece. And now you have the ability to get the best of everything. And we saw an opportunity to add value because these were still in their infancy. So that is when we made the transition to move primarily towards the Salesforce ecosystem, because there was just so much happening. And we felt we could bring some of our SAP process knowledge to these newer ecosystems like Salesforce.
But that also backs one question, right? So now you work with this large company that everyone knows, right? And now you start your own company. What drove you to that? What was the deciding factor for you to build your own company?
We thought that eventually this was the time also preceding the dot-com boom. So we felt that there was a compelling need for companies to come in and plug in the gaps. And there was a fever in the air. Everybody, very similar actually to what is going on right now with AI, where you have people dropping out of undergraduate programs. I know two of them personally, saying that I just can't waste time going to school because there's just so much happening in AI. I do not want to miss the bus. So similarly, we did not want to miss the dot-com boom, and we felt that we could really build. And our intention was to add the internet layer or the B2B marketplace layer on top of SAP, which is why we call the company B2B Matrix.
Very cool, interesting. Now, I have one question, since you led so many Salesforce and SAP programs, right? So what early experience most shaped how you architect cross-cloud process flows now?
Well, what we have found has worked in our favor is to always take an end-to-end view. So though, for example, we do a lot of our work in, let's say, coding, or let's say in some cases we might do CRM, we were still very interested to talk about the end-to-end flow, and especially the financial impact as to what happens when you go to the next step of a lead or an opportunity or a quote. What happens outside of Salesforce, because that would then influence our design of how we would implement it in Salesforce in the first place. interesting benefit of that was when we started having those conversations, they would bring in the finance people who normally not be associated with the Salesforce implementation. They would bring in the backend people,
Mm.
and that would actually help us validate our thinking, and we got better and better. And even the finance people appreciated it because they felt that they're being left out because a lot of these Salesforce projects were being driven by the VP of sales. This whole thing was started by, of course, Siebel, where they actually said, and the pitch was to the VP of sales in that let's give the power to you, not to the IT. You can drive your own destiny. So that's when there was a clear separation that we saw between the front end and the back end.
Interesting. One other thing that I want to ask you also is about AI, right? So, I mean, everyone's talking about it for 2.5 years. I'm pretty sure we'll talk a little bit more about it here as well. But one thing I wanted to ask you is, in one of your projects, have you used AI and actually improved something? If so, tell me a little bit more about that. Would be interested to hear what your experience is.
Yes, so we have a project that we did, and it is in three phases. We have completed two phases. The first phase was where it was the scenario is quoting, where we used, let's say, imagine you are quoting and you have just joined the company, you are 6 months into the company. It automatically looks at all the historical quotes, the agent force algorithm, and it feeds all of that into the prompt builder and comes up with a pricing guidance to the person who's coding. So now you're able to take advantage of all this data and all of the knowledge that is there in Salesforce. But I have to admit that the first phase wasn't as compelling because what happened is we surfaced all of this and it was a whole bunch of textual information saying that I think we should do this. In the past, this customer has done it. So it was a lot of valuable information. But that still relied on the salesperson or the person who's reading it to look at it and then take some action. So it was very cool. It had the data cloud component. We ingested the information and then put it into prompt builder. So technically, it was very nice, but from a business impact standpoint, it wasn't that compelling. And all of the articles that I've read about AI POC projects are failing, that flashed in my mind. And I'm like, we better snap out of it quick because this isn't going to stand only on its technical legs. So we quickly pivoted and we started asking Sindh that what is a ideal business outcome? What do you really want to accomplish? What can we do? And we arrived at the fact that, hey, can we save the salesperson actual time, clicks? These are measurable
Yeah.
and increase the velocity. So now in the second phase, what we did was that you go on to an opportunity and then you work with the agent force or what was previously called the Einstein Copilot. And the salesperson says, create a code for me. And they have the ability to add some more information if they wanted to. And they click a button. And then we have in the background four template codes, which we point to based on the prompt that the salesperson gave. And it creates a code with the line items. So that saves them quite a few clicks. And then once they create the code, they can further interact with it and then make some changes. The benefit of this is the code that is created already has some guidelines, so it's a pre-approved code. So now imagine with this, not only have we saved the salesperson the clicks, we are saving that entire approval cycle, which takes a fair amount of time. So the second phase, I think, was much more compelling than the first. The first one was, I think, satisfying for us as a consulting company, but not as satisfying for the customer.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But you were talking about three phases. So what's the third phase?
Yes. Now, in the third phase, what we are doing is we want to bring in data external to Salesforce. So all this we are doing only by operating within Salesforce. Now there is data in the ERP system. For example, what have we done? Has this customer paid his or her invoices in time? What is the current inflation rate? So if there's a business that is dependent on, let's say, the oil prices, let's bring in the oil prices dynamically from outside. So how do we in the AI prompt ingest data from external sources such as your ERP, such as an internet sources, and then surface that? That is what we are working on right now.
Very interesting. I'm pretty sure when we keep going on this one, we will spend the whole podcast on it. I don't want to do that today, but that's fascinating. Maybe we get back to it later in the discussion. Anyway, before we do that, I want to ask you a question I ask every guest for a long time now is, what do you like to do when you don't work?
Well, I used to, and I continue to do a lot of yoga, but a few years back, the place where I used to do yoga, they and this is hot yoga, so it's called Bikram yoga.
Yeah.
They pasted one poster saying that, hey, we plan to start hot Pilates. So I inquired, I said, what is this and who's going to teach it? They said, oh, we don't know who's going to teach it. I think we're going to have some teacher training. And I said, hey, can I go for that? And they said, yeah, sure, you can go for it. So I went through the teacher training and then I auditioned to become a Pilates instructor and then got selected. And then I've been teaching Pilates for the past 5 or 6 years. So that kind of, so between the yoga practice and teaching Pilates, I think that keeps me occupied.
Oh, wow. I think you're the first one ever who mentioned that. Now I had almost 400 guests on the show, right? So that says something. Excellent. How much time do you spend on this each week?
I think I'll at least spend 5 to 6 hours per week on either yoga or teaching Pilates.
Wow, very cool, very impressive. So excellent. Then let's go ahead, switch gears a little bit. Let's talk about B2B Matrix, right? So, and let's start by telling me a little bit more about the products and services that you offer.
Well, let's start with the services, which is the easy part, which is similar. We are a microcosm of many other consulting companies, and we do have our own differentiation. But the commonalities, I have to admit, are similar to many other companies where we go in, we do the discovery, we focus on business outcomes, and we tend to deliver under time, under budget, etc. But where we try to differentiate ourselves is by making sure that we can focus on small to mid-sized businesses. Now that there are two reasons for it. It is partially a choice, partially it is not a choice. Because we are not that big, bigger companies choose to work with bigger consulting companies. There are many reasons for that. There is some peace of mind that yes, there is a brand and an image and everything like that. At the same time, small to mid-sized companies, they are not looking usually more than $100,000 per implementation, and bigger consulting companies are not able to do that. So this is where we find our niche in that, okay, let's go over here. So this is where we proactively reach out to people. So that is what we do in services. There are also bigger consulting companies that white label our services. So we are subcontracting to bigger consulting companies. So on the surface of it, the client thinks it's the bigger consulting company, but behind the scenes, it is us that is providing the services. We get a job satisfaction by doing good work, but the drawback over there is we don't own the customer relationship in that case. And that is okay because we are grateful to the consulting company to have brought us in. So that is on the services side.
Excellent. Product side, anything to mention there?
Yes, so what we have really, I think, done a good job in differentiating ourselves is based on the products that we have introduced, and we have spent a lot of time building that, and we have made it free, and it is on the App Exchange. So this adds all kinds of capabilities. We can talk a bit more about it. And the idea was that this would attract customers because we don't really spend a lot of dollars in marketing. So we said, let's not lead with SEO, marketing, LinkedIn, email campaigns. Let's lead with some capabilities which we think we have, make it free, and let's see if that works. So, fortunately, there are two big customers who we would have normally never ever reached by just consulting services messages, but we were able to get these two bigger customers because of this solution that we have.
Excellent. And I think that's something that we will look at separately, and we will publish that on YouTube at one point, right? So, but not right now. Excellent. But so you already talked about the size of your customers, but what industries are they typically in?
So I like industries which have a lot of moving parts. Now, what does that mean? Moving parts meaning they either are in distribution or manufacturing. So that way, after the order is done, somebody has to actually do some fulfillment. Somebody actually has to go to the location, or you have to purchase some products to raw materials, and then you have to manufacture it, and then you have to ship it. And there's a logistic portion. So the more the moving parts, the more our experience and process knowledge of all these years of looking at it end to end and being able to understand the flow in both directions. You go in the forward direction, but when something doesn't work, for example, a classic example is when something has to be returned, you have to go back in the reverse direction right from the beginning. So this is where I think we add a lot more value. And what we originally talked a little bit about, our end-to-end approach, I think has more application when we have a company that is manufacturing or distribution.
Okay, makes sense. And you focus mostly on customers in North America, or you have customers worldwide? I would
No,
expect.
all of our customers are in North America. Our delivery is now we have shifted a lot into Latin America, so we can talk a bit more about it. But the customer base is all in North America.
Are you evaluating CPQ solutions? The Novo CPQ briefing subscription gives you vendor neutral briefs you can read in minutes. They are built for the early step of selection, moving from a long list to a focused short list of 5 to 10 vendors. Each brief explains capabilities, where it fits, and what to watch out for. No hype. Many subscribers pair the briefs with AI tools like ChatGPT or Gemini to search faster and compare options. If you want clarity before RFPs and demos start, learn more at novocpq.com/cpq-briefing-subscription. Shortlist faster. Now, let's talk a little bit about which vendors and adjacent platforms you actively implement today, right? So we already mentioned Salesforce CPQ, I mentioned Conga, CPQ and CLM, the SAP, the variant configuration, and so on. Where do you lean and when and why?
So historically, we have been driven where the market is going. So we also try to predict the market. But then when we see that, let's say back in 2014, 15, 16, Aptus, which is now Conga, was leading the market. So we were partners of theirs and we did a lot of work. And even today, we happen to have two customers where we are providing Aptus support.
Hmm.
Then, as we all know, after the acquisition of Steelbrick, the market slowly started shifting and evolving towards Steelbrick. What was fascinating, actually, Frank, was very interesting. The positioning at that time, I remember clearly that when the market was not clear, Salesforce AEs would say, well, if you're looking for a big enterprise CPQ, go with Aptus, that's fine.
Yeah.
But for small and medium size, use Salesforce CPQ. And as it became more and more entrenched, slowly they dropped that message and they said that, okay, we can now do it all. And it happened. So it is very clear that you can't, if Salesforce puts its might and strength behind a product, then chances are that it will have sales given the size of the Salesforce. So we also kind of shifted with them towards Salesforce CPQ. We have executed more than 50 or 60 Salesforce CPQ projects. And now the latest evolution is Revenue Cloud. So we are doing two projects right now on Revenue Cloud.
Got it. And do you offer any proprietary accelerators or products for CPQ quote to cash?
Yeah, that's we do have a proprietary product, and it does three things. It plugs in or adds, I should say, a lot of capability. And by the way, this applies to both CPQ and to Revenue Cloud, where it does three things. One is a reimagined visual interface that lets you do many things that normally says it's not possible in Salesforce. But the other two are even more interesting, where you are able to surface data from any ERP right within Salesforce without the need for any middleware. So it is as if, imagine you're working, Frank, on a code, and in the tab right next to it, which is where the visualization component comes in, you can see the inventory from SAP or NetSuite in real time, or you can see the invoice status in real time. So you are able to bring all of the enterprise information from the backend into front end without having to actually copy that data. It's like having a window into your backend systems right at the fingertips. So that is what this product does.
Excellent. Then let's talk about the CPQ market right now. Where is the CPQ market from your perspective right now?
Well, we know that Salesforce is very actively pushing Revenue Cloud, so we know that. However, I think it is taking its time, and rightly so, because there are 6,000 plus CPQ customers, and there is a lot of talk about getting them to migrate, but I really don't understand or see that logic. I really think of any, whether it's CPQ or Revenue Cloud or any other product, anything that you buy is kind of like you're moving into a new house. It may be the best house at that time, and it's going to take you 2 or 3 years to customize it to your liking. Now, after you customize it, you're going to stay there at least for 4 or 5 years and enjoy it. There may be a house that has come up right next door. It has new plumbing, new appliances, looks great, but you also know that you can move there, but you're gonna spend another 2 years customizing it to your liking anyway, whereas this one is already customized. So unless there is a super compelling desire or a need, I don't see that there will be a big push for the existing people to move to the new Revenue Cloud. So Salesforce is gonna continue to have to push Revenue Cloud to people who do not have a CPQ, or their CPQ is at least 8 years old. That is the number that I've come up with based on experience. That, and again, I take the house analogy where, okay, I bought this house, I took 2, 3 years to make it, I've enjoyed it for 5 years. Now I'm ready to move on to a new house.
I like the comparison, so I think it makes sense, right? So with the 8 years, I'm not 100% sure, but it makes sense. Got it. Um, but right now, it's also, you see any patterns, especially since you talked about the Salesforce adoption more by deal size, industry, anything that shows you these guys are more likely to buy the new Revenue Cloud Advanced solution. These guys are more or more aggressive to move from the older to the newer platform. Anything interesting that you want to share here?
Yes. So I'll give you a very specific example. So there is one customer who is actually a Conga customer, but they could have very well been a Salesforce CPQ customer. There, again, implementation has been working well. Now it has come to a point where what happens is their customization that you have done. By the way, the customization is a good thing. It's a source of a competitive advantage. It's a source of a differentiation. You have done the customization, your organization has adapted to it, and it's a good thing. There's nothing wrong with it. But sometimes the customization, the pendulum swings so much to the other end where then you get into it's no longer customization, and then you start referring to as technical debt. And the distinction between the two is when you are actually prevented from implementing new processes. Let's say you want to go into a new market, you want to sell a new product, or you want to sell a product on a usage-based consumption model, and your system is not allowing you to do that.
Hmm.
That is a compelling reason they say, okay, now I think I'm going to look at a new system. And that is when they will then consider Revenue Cloud.
So then let's talk a little bit more about this move from the classic CPQ towards Revenue Cloud Advanced, right? So because that's steering some debate, as we just discussed. What's your decision framework for a customer on whether to stay, optimize, or migrate? And what hidden costs or data prerequisites do teams underestimate based on your experience?
So, if we can unpack that question into two pieces, what would be a good way to decide whether you're ready for it or not? So, the question that I ask is your system delivering to you your existing system? It could be Excel for all you care, or it could be CPQ, it could be Conga, whatever you're using for quoting. Is it giving you the competitive advantage in line with whatever your business plans are? Your business plans are, for example, you're a company. Private equity has just taken an investment into you, and now they're expecting you to grow twice as fast. They're expecting you to acquire some smaller companies. Is your platform going to enable you to assimilate that? If your platform is not going to enable you to do that, now you need to look at something else. So you really need to focus on what business outcome you are expecting as part of your plan, and then work backwards from that. A
Hmm.
very simplistic example is, are you now moving into a distribution business where you're going to have to quote 500 to 1000 lines, or are you bringing in distributors who you want to give access to your system, and your system, current systems do not allow you to do that?
Hmm.
This is an example of you wanting to get into a market, but your systems are preventing you from getting into a market. So then this becomes a compelling reason for you to consider a new system, whether it is Revenue Cloud or whichever system you choose.
Very good answer like that. Now let's talk about the integration, right? So especially between CRM, CPQ, and ERP. So that has been pretty basic from the start, right? So I was just wondering from your perspective, how tight does this integration have to be in 2025?
Yes, so this is where our viewpoint is that there is. We actually wrote an article just last week where we titled it "The Death of Middleware." So,
Mhm.
and the logo that we put on it is just like the Salesforce logo, which says "No software," or there's software and there's a line across it. We created a logo which says "Middleware" and there's a line across it,
Mm.
because integration, of course, is necessary. We understand, but the way we do the integration, I think, needs to be questioned. The way we are doing integration today is the way we have been doing it for the past 10 years.
Mm.
There was a time and a place when the systems, let us take two systems. Let's say take Salesforce and let's take SAP. Their APIs were not robust. So the middleware came in and said, no problem. I will talk to each one of them and I will add this value.
Hmm.
Now these APIs are so well defined and so well established. They all adhere to REST API standards that it is very easy for you to surface, which is exactly the technology we are using to surface or provide a window or virtualized window into any ERP within Salesforce. So integration is needed, of course, but whether we do it and whether the data actually has to be copied over and whether it needs to be a 3 month complex project or not, that is what we are challenging now.
Hmm. Hmm. But based on what you see, how would you say, how tight does the integration have to be now?
I believe that the integration has to be tight only. I think you have to decide whether how tight you need to be. And I always advise all my clients to say, let's start with asking why you need it. For example, if you need it only for visibility, then that's not integration. That's just surfacing the data. And because you don't have a login, you don't like that other system, you have the tendency of saying, let me gather all the data into Salesforce so I have it. But that's no longer a good assumption anymore. You can surface data without bringing it over. So, first of all, let's start with simplicity. The places where integration is needed, I further break it down into two categories. One is master data, one is transaction data. Master data is, of course, you need a one time integration or a periodic update because the customer accounts are usually the source of truth is the front end system because that's where they originate. Your product data and your pricing data, it may be a backend system because the products are defined there. So we understand that the sources of truth are in two different places and they need to update each other's system. That is clearly a use case and that needs to be very tight. From a transaction, I think it is very, very clear delineation between what is a quote, what is an order, what is an invoice, what is a delivery. So as long as that information is passed back and forth, I think that is sufficient. I don't know if any more integration needs to be undertaken. And I say that to go a little bit against the grain because I've seen so many projects that somehow integration and middleware becomes the center stage. And it you kind of sort of go away or deviate from what you really set out to accomplish.
Excellent, like that answer. So because I see also much more tighter integration, right? So between PLM systems and CPQ systems and then the ERP systems and the CRM systems, right? So this triangle, especially from a manufacturing point of view, right? So was just wondering what you thought about that.
No, that is true. So we are trying our best to say that I don't think anybody is going to ever win the battle of what's going to be the source of truth. Either both of these statements are true. No system is a source of truth, and all systems want to be the source of truth. Both
Hmm.
these statements are true. How can we accomplish it? If I am a VP of sales and I am a little bit tired of my IT team, or I don't want to have anything to do with the backend system, it is in my interest to bring everything in the system that I work in so that I'm self-sufficient. But if everybody takes that point of view, you just have lots and lots of data redundancy, and then it causes other issues. And then we have these other systems that come into place. Is that no problem? Now we will help you solve the problem of master data management. And we are saying that why are we creating the problem in the first place? Let the data be where it needs to be and we'll surface it accordingly wherever is needed. So we are not questioning whether PLM data is important in CRM or not, or whether CRM data is important in SAP, in the backend system or not. What we are questioning is whether it really needs to move or it just needs to be available enough for you to be able to take decisions on it.
I think that's a very good answer. Should give lots of teams ideas to think a little bit deeper about it, which I think is a good idea. Anyway, let's look at your current customers and the top issues they mentioned to you. Since I always mentioned three, I'm asking you here also for the top three business requirements that you discuss with your customers. What are these?
Yes, so of course, needless to say, AI is top of mind, and even if it is not top of mind, then we are proactively bringing AI to the table, saying that please allow us to tell you where we can impact using AI on any of your processes. So that is number one. The number two issue, if and we can go into each one of these issues a little bit deeper if you wish. The
Hmm.
number two issue is just cleaning up all of this master data that is all over the place. We just touched upon it. It becomes quite problematic to figure out which one to update when and what is the source of truth. And the third thing that we're trying to do is how can we increase the transaction velocity? We can do all of these things that we are doing, and but it has to be tied to a business outcome. So I really try very hard to train myself whenever I go into a discussion to step back from Salesforce or NetSuite or integration and say, what are your business outcomes? Or if it's a public company, I'll go through their annual report and say, what has the CEO committed that they want to accomplish? Are they trying to go into new markets? Then I know that they are going to be doing some acquisitions. Or are they trying to introduce some new products? Then I know that they're going to have a whole new pricing strategy, etc. And then I really, really try hard to tie it to the business outcomes.
I think we're coming to the end of our episode today. One note before I ask you for the contact information is we will have a YouTube video as a follow-up to show the tool that we were talking about in a little bit more detail, right? So, and also to see it, because I think honestly that's much more helpful to see it than to talk about it. But what's a good way for interested listeners to contact you in case they have any follow-up questions for you?
Yes, info at b2b-matrix.com, or the LinkedIn profile, which we can publish very easily, or they can follow. Yeah, I guess those are the two ways, or the phone number, text, any and all of the above forms of communication are fine.
Perfect. And we will have all this information in the show notes, right? So, Hiren, thank you very much for making time for the CPQ podcast today.
Thank you, Frank. I think the what you do with your podcast and interviewing all the different people in the industry, I think that's of great service. I go through your videos every once in a while, and actually, I quite like you. We talked in an earlier conversation. I sometimes do it when I'm walking, so I'm looking at listening to this podcast. But I think it's a great service to get a unfiltered, unbiased point of view, and especially the way you conduct the podcast, it makes it very easy for the information to be free flowing.
Thank you very much. Always happy to hear that it's helpful. So thank you very much again, Hiren.
Thank you, Frank.
I'd like to thank everyone for listening and hope you learned something interesting today. If you like the podcast, please go ahead and rate it on iTunes or share it with your friends and colleagues. In the meantime, you can find us online at www.novocpq.com. So long, everyone.